All right, question 18. We're going to use the calculator completely for this. Not required, but it's helpful if you know this little trick in the calculator. Alpha, green alpha button, y equals, top left corner, and then choose number 1. And it gives us this fancy fraction, makes it easier to type it in. You could just do 27 divided by 64 and it work, but this is just, it looks more like the problem, so I like this better. Raised to, and again, we're going to do alpha y equals number 1 to raise it to the fractional power. We're going to get an answer in decimal format. These are in fractions. So there's a button for that as well. Press the math button. Number 1 for frac. Enter one more time. 16/9 is our answer. 19. Loto begins at his back door and walks 8 yards east. So here we go. Here is his back door. He walks 8 yards east, not drawn to scale. So we'll call that 8. And then 6 yards north. And then 12 yards east again. And then finally 5 yards north to the barn door. So the question says about how many yards less would he walk if he could walk directly from the back door to the barn door. I'm trying to make that straight. It's close. Okay, so first off, the zigzag pattern, that's easy to figure out how far he walked. That's just 8 plus 6 plus 12 plus 5. So 8 plus 6 is 14, plus 12 is 26, plus 5 is 31. So the zigzag pattern, he has walked 31 yards. To find the straight path, which is obviously going to be shorter. Now, first off, it wants to know how many yards less is he walking in this red line. We know it's not 31, and we can probably venture to say it's not 26. And even 23 seems like a large number. 19 even seems kind of like a large number. Like, do we think this red line is less than 30, more than 19, only 19 yards less than 31? I don't think so, but let's use math to double check. We're going to do Pythagorean theorem because we have 2 right triangles. So first, to find this side, we're going to look at this right triangle here, and we see it's 6 squared plus 8 squared equals c squared. 6 squared plus 8 squared, that is 100. C squared equals 100. Square root of 100 is 10. You should just know this. Right triangle, if 2 of the sides are 6 and 8, third side is guaranteed to be 10. And then this triangle up here, this is another one you should just know, but if you don't, you can do Pythagorean theorem. 5 squared plus 12 squared equals c squared. 5 squared plus 12 squared is 169. The square root of 169 is 13. Again, you should just know that. 5, 12, the third side is always 13 if it's a right triangle. So 13 plus 10 is 23. So just as we expected, these are 8 yards apart. But you probably could have just guessed that without doing all that math. Number 20, for a given set of data, the standard score z corresponding to the raw score x is given by z equals x minus, we'll just call that u, divided by the standard deviation, where u is the mean of the set and standard deviation is, this symbol is the standard deviation, epsilon is what that's called. If for a set of scores, the u equals 78 and the standard deviation equals 6, which of the following is the raw score x corresponding to z equals 2? So this is just, we're trying to solve for x. They give us all these variables in the problem. So z, let's start with that, is 2. X is what we are trying to find, minus, that symbol's also actually called mu. but we'll just call it U. U is 78 divided by the standard deviation in this problem, which is 6. We could cross multiply there. 2 times 6 is 12. I'm about out of space, so I'll just put it here. Put 2 over 1. If you cross multiply that, anything times 1 is itself. So you just get x minus 78. Add 78 to both sides, and we get x equals 90. F. 21. Again, skip the actual reading. Even though it's short, we can skip it. Just look at the diagram, look at the question. Which of the following does not appear in this figure? So first we go with an acute triangle. So let's focus on this triangle right here first. This angle is 60. So these other two angles have to be, there's 180 degrees inside a triangle. So these other two angles have to add up to 120. Now, there's a short way and a long way to do this. The long way is you recognize, oh, this is a radius of the circle, A to O, and B to O is also a radius of the circle. So these two sides of the triangle are congruent, which means this angle and this angle are congruent, which means they both have to be 60. The short way to do it is you just look at that triangle. And doesn't it look like all three of those sides are congruent? Absolutely. And 9 times out of 10, that works. So this is an equilateral and equal angular triangle. And it's also an acute triangle because all three of the angles are less than 90. So we're going to mark that one off because that does appear in the figure. Equilateral triangle does appear in the figure because this triangle here is equilateral. If all the angles are congruent, that means all the sides are congruent, and that's what an equilateral triangle is. An isosceles triangle we can cross off too. An isosceles triangle is any triangle that has at least two sides congruent. Well, this triangle satisfies that because it has at least two sides congruent. So it's an isosceles and an equilateral triangle. Right triangle, we can cross that off because we've got a right angle right here in this other triangle. Scalene means all three sides are a different length. This one is the only one that could be scalene, but you can kind of tell that this is the radius of the circle, and so is this. They look congruent. They are congruent. 21 is E. And then finally, 22, what is the slope of a line in the standard coordinate plane that is parallel to x plus 5y equals 9? Parallel lines, you just got to know this, have the same slope, which say equal slope. So that means whatever the slope of this line is, we know the slope of the line parallel to that. To find the slope of this line, we need to put it in something called slope-intercept form, where this number right here, the coefficient for x, is our slope. We don't care about the y, we don't care about the x, we don't care about the b, we care about the number in front of x once it is in slope-intercept form. So let's take x plus 5y equals 9 and put it in slope-intercept form by isolating the y variable. So easiest way to do that is subtract x from both sides. I didn't mean to delete those, but it kind of works because they do indeed cancel each other out. And we get 5y equals, we got 9 and a negative x. Those aren't like terms. We want to write the negative x first, though, because that's how slope-intercept is written. It's always written the x variable first. So negative x, and then that is a positive 9. And then divide everything by 5. Cancel, and we get y equals negative. Don't care about this at all. All we care about is the coefficient in front of x. And we get negative x over 5. Sometimes this tricks people up. Like, what number is in front of x right here? Well, we know it's not 9. We know it's not 9/5. Not sure where the 9 is coming from. We know it's not positive 1/5 because this is obviously a negative number. So it's either f or g. And you should see, since the 5 is in the denominator at the bottom of that fraction, it's going to be g. Remember, there's an assumed 1, or in this case, negative 1, in front of the x if it's not written. So the slope of this line is -1/5, which means the slope of the line parallel to it is also -1/5.